Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, just trying to get all these screens up. Uh, Hello, Awake TV family. This is Chris Alicia. I'm coming to you live with my very first episode. Uh, it's going to be amazing. My show is called Intentionality, Remembering Your Divine Blueprint. And the point of this episode, one, I wanted to be on the launch because this is such a big deal. It's such an amazing, amazing network. And the teachers on this have been completely inspiring to me. So I wanted to be a part of this show, even though I normally air on Fridays at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. I wanted to come today and redo a little bit of my introduction. I already did an introduction video for those of you who have watched it, but also really get you interested in what intentionality is all about. So the focus of this show is to bridge spirit and science. So a lot of spiritual people are very right-brained people. They are creative, they're artistic, they're beautiful, and they see the world in a wonderful way. I have not met as many left-brained spiritual people, and they're out there. I know they're out there because I am one of them. What I want to do with this show is show that spirituality can fit left-brained people as well. So I want to show how science, how the quantum physics world and mathematics and music, how these very left brain modalities help to prove that spirituality is real, that there is something in this universe that is magical. And I want science to really help you engage in this world. So bringing in people that might not have thought that the whole woo-woo world was for them. This is not about the woo-woo. I want science and very logical research to show you the truth behind spirituality. And that is the focus of this show. So I am inviting all the left brain people out there to come watch my shows on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, because we're going to be going through research. We're going to be going through experiments. We're going to have a blast. And this is going to be a combined effort. So I need you to share this information out about the show. I need you to comment on the comments page. You have a comments page below my video. So please comment. I am listening. I want to interact with you. And at the end of the show, I'm going to show you my email because I want to hear your thoughts on what you saw today. So moving right into it. So where intentionality came from. So the name itself, it's kind of weird. Intentionality, as far as I know, is not a real word, but it's very real to me. So intention, the word intention is defined as your course of action. So what do I plan to do? I plan to go to the grocery store. That is my intention. Intentionally is defined as the mental state behind that. I need food. So I'm going to go to the grocery store to get my food. Intentionality is a term that has been coming to me in meditations and my spiritual work for about a year now. And I kept using it in sentences and thinking, this is not a real word. And I asked Spirit, I asked my higher self, I asked whomever it is that has been helping me and guiding me, what does intentionality mean? And what I heard was that intentionality is the divine proof that everything is created to a blueprint, that the entire universe has a divine blueprint to it. The universe, the stars, the planets, all the way down to the microcosms inside of our body are divinely created, and they're created with a purpose. So I started to do research and get very, very heavy into what this meant. And that was where the basis of intentionality came from. I started to see patterns in the universe, patterns in the ancient civilizations that we are obsessed with, patterns in symbology and math. And that is where intentionality came from. Intentionality to me means divinely created and created to a blueprint that we can see and understand. So that is the purpose of this show. So the real puzzle of life, and the reason that most of us are spiritual seekers is because we feel like something's not right or just not complete. So we go out there and we look for groups of people. We look for hobbies, for drugs in some cases, for anything to really give meaning to our lives. Um, and this goes for spiritual people as well. We have things that we look to give meaning, external things, outside things, when really the every puzzle piece that you need, everything you need to find meaning is already inside of you. You're not looking for divinity out in the world. You are divine. You are divinely created, and you are connected to everything around you. And that is the point of doing this type of research and bringing in sacred geometry, quantum physics, mathematics, music, combining these into your own form of spirituality to show that humanity, the earth, the universe, everything is divinely created, and it's created to a language that you can understand and see. So before I really jump into it, I'm going to give you a fairly candid background on myself. So this is very, very outside of my normal thing doing this video. I have never taught spirituality before. I was former military, and I have been teaching with the military for many, many years. So I'm comfortable teaching, but the spirituality and sharing that vulnerable side of me, it's going to be interesting. So be kind. So let me step back to my childhood, which was, I'd always been interested in spirituality. I had been exposed to religions. So grew up in a Protestant church. We went occasionally. I remember mostly, Christmas and Easter and the really big ones. And I remember being able to sing and color on the programs that they had in there. I don't particularly remember the content of the episodes. Episodes is, oh goodness, I'm a terrible church person. I don't remember what it was that they preached because it didn't resonate with me. And I had a best friend, and I would do sleepovers at her house on Saturdays and end up going to her Catholic church with her. And those sermons I do remember, and I remember because I felt like such an outsider at those that I knew I could never feel what they felt. I remember sitting in those churches and looking at all these people who felt something I didn't feel, who felt like they belonged to something I didn't belong to, and knew I didn't belong to them. So they would all get up to do communion and walk up, and they would tell me I had to stay in the pew and sit by myself. And I remember just feeling so excluded from it that it really opened my eyes to what organized religion as a whole, how that fit into my life. And organized religion can be absolutely wonderful. So please don't think I'm criticizing anybody, because all religions are absolutely beautiful. It's the measure of control that I've seen and I've experienced that gave me a lot of problems when I was a child. So I started looking outside of organized religion. I remember reading a lot about paganism, about Wiccan, about Buddhism, about just anything that was outside of, you have to go to a church and you have to pray this amount of times a day. So it was always something I was interested in, but it was never the focus of my life. I'm not someone who really saw ghosts as a child or anything like that. I remember telling my mother once that I saw her father, and I felt like such a fraud when I told her that even to this day, I couldn't tell you if I did or not. But I remember the episode very vividly. So I would see these wonderful spiritual people and just thought that that was something mystic, something well outside of what I could do as a person. So it was never, ever my focus. So when I was around 13, 14, my family went through a very, very nasty divorce. And it's please forgive my hesitation. The relationship with my mother was very contentious. She was having a lot of problems that I absolutely do not want to share with the world, but our relationship became abusive. So much so that I constantly ran away. Not very far. I went to my dad's house, but I constantly had to run away from what was very traumatic for me. So traumatic, in fact, that I spent most of my high school years sleeping. I would go to school, I would play my sports, I would go home and I would sleep. And the reason I slept so much, and I don't know how many of my family actually know this, so if you're listening, uh, surprise, but I had this dream, this alter ego dream woman. And I named her Kat Sloan was the name of her, but I called her the Child of Light. And this woman was strong. She was a warrior. She could heal with her hands. She could control the elements. She fought for people that couldn't fight for themselves. And every single time I closed my eyes in high school, in that time that I was just incredibly depressed. I did contemplate suicide a few times. I never attempted anything. But I felt like life was not going to get better. But this woman that I was in my dreams was everything that I wanted to be. She was Shira and Xena combined with an angel. Just stunning, right? So I dreamt of this woman for 6 or 7 years. And every once in a while, I still have dreams about this woman. So my high school experience was very, very difficult. In that respect, that I became very introverted. And I never thought about spirituality again after that point. I was just too wrapped up in my own head. So after high school, I putzed around a little bit, waited tables, never thought about spirituality. And my father, who is one of my best friends and most assuredly a member of my soul group, we've known each other many, many times. He told me to do what I had always been telling myself I would do, which was get out there and make a difference and save the world. I've been saying it since I was a kid. I was going to save the world. So he told me enough is enough. Stop sleeping until noon. Join the military. Save the world. Do what you want to do. Follow your dreams. So I had to shake off that depression that I had held on to so deeply for so long in order to do that, to take that leap, to go into the military, to do something that my alter ego woman would do, to serve, to fight. So I did. I joined the Air Force. And for anybody watching who says that's not a real branch, shame on you. It's Veterans Day. And happy Veterans Day to all my fellow vets. Thank you for your service. So in the military, I got put into a computer job, and I had never done computer work before. And I was measuring electronic signals and all this other crazy stuff that was well outside of what I had done in school. In high school, I just wasn't a good student, but I was good at it. I was very good at it. I learned for the first time that I had skills, that I was smart, that I could stand up on my own 2 feet and take an ass chewing like a champion and keep doing my job. I learned that I had a purpose. And for me, that purpose was the military. I threw everything into my work. It defined who I was for many, many years. And even after I got out of active duty, I stayed on as a contractor and a civilian. And around 2009, I had my crucible. I had my crash and burn moment. I was in a relationship that had ended badly. We had been living together, so now I was in an apartment I couldn't afford. I had a job in a technical field that I hated. It just didn't fit me. And I had medical pains. I had all these terrible, terrible neck pains and shoulder pains from sports injuries. I'd played a lot of sports growing up and had tendonitis and all this other great stuff. So I was in chronic pain. I was broke and could not afford the medical bills, was terrified how I was going to pay for my rent. And I'd lost the person I loved and I hated my job. So to top that all off, now in this big apartment by myself, I started to be visited by a ghost. And I really can't describe it any other way. And I told you, I'm not someone who saw ghosts growing up, but all of a sudden my apartment frightened me. I would be sleeping and something would wake me up. Something would touch me and wake me up. And you know how when you wake up, you see that blob in the sky, right? Like you see a shadow. And you know, if you focus on it, that shadow will become the coat rack. It's completely innocuous. You know exactly what it is. I would stare at the shadow and it would not move. It would become even more smoky and immaterial. At one point, it was directly over my face and it was red. It would pull my covers off and I would feel it sit on the side of my bed. I know I was in my late 20s. I was scared of the dark. So I was sleeping with the lights on and all these other problems compounding. I crashed. I could not take anymore. Um, it was a very, very dark time for me. So again, I went to my dad, who, when you look back at all these stories, he's going to very much sound like my guru. And he absolutely is. He was a guide. Who knew? Love you, Dad. Um, so he told me about this group that was founded by Edgar Cayce, who is the sleeping prophet. He had a foundation out in Virginia Beach, which is called Association of Research and Enlightenment. And they were having a retreat that weekend out in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So it was like a 7-hour drive for me. He told me, I will pay for you to go. Go away for a weekend. Get away from your life. Tune out. This spiritual stuff has always kind of been on your periphery. Go focus on it for a weekend and see how you feel. So he had been an ARE member with my mother when he was younger. So he had very fond memories of it. So I went there, and Judith Pendleton was the host for the weekend. And she led us on these just magical meditations. It was the first time I'd ever meditated. And I cried solid for 2 days. I would hike through the woods and I would cry. I would sit in her meditations and it was like purging my soul. She had this one meditation where you had to envision the part of your body that was hurting. And I envisioned my heart, and she asked you, what did it look like? You have to describe this in the meditation. And it looked like my heart had been torn in two, just jagged on both sides. And she said, okay, picture doing what you have to heal this wounded part. So I remember I took a string of light and I sewed my heart back together. And at the end of the meditation, I had to put it back inside of my body. And it was such a profound experience to realize that I was walking around with that much trauma, that it was physically manifesting in every part of my life. And that was just one of many meditations. And if you haven't heard her, you should listen to her guided meditations. They're amazing. But I realized that this was a part of my life that I'd been ignoring. I always wanted the purpose. I wanted to be that child of light that I saw in my dreams. So that's why I focused on the military, and it made sense at the time, but I was burning myself down to the ground because I was focused totally on my body, on the three-dimensional world. I completely ignored this other part of me. So as soon as that retreat was over, I started absorbing every spiritual thing that I could get my hands on. I would come back. I was going to ARE retreats a couple times a year. I was reading all sorts of books. I would expound upon my brilliance to my family and friends and all the stuff that I've learned. And at first it felt like I could fly. My aha moments at the beginning were so profound that there was absolutely no going back, because that feeling that you have when you wake up for the first time, there's just no describing it. So I remember I saw, for like the first year after this episode, I saw rainbows everywhere. I saw rainbows in the clouds. I saw rainbows in the water. I would look down at my hand and a rainbow would be just shooting across my hand, to the point where I was worried that something was wrong with my eyes. Um, and I even went to an eye doctor and said, do you know, what does it mean if you see colors? Um, and she had no answers for me. I didn't realize at the time what it was, but it was my sight trying to kick in. And not only that, but it was a guide of mine who I work with very closely now, Metatron, whose symbol is the rainbow. And they were just, the spiritual world was just so happy that I was finally awake, that they were just manifesting in rainbows all over the place. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. But aha moments, eventually, you know, they calm down. You get back into the normal world. And I did. I got back into the real world. I started working my butt off again, working weekends, working 68 hours a week. And I got sick. I got diagnosed with cancer right before my 30th birthday. So once again, although I'm studying spirituality, I still hadn't learned that this was something that I really needed to focus on. So breast cancer was fun. I got diagnosed while I was in a training course. I was in a 4-month training course, and I found a lump and I kept it to myself. And I kept it to myself for several reasons. One, I knew what it was. Something deep inside me knew that it was cancer. Two, my boss had just died of breast cancer. And three, I didn't want to acknowledge how much that would change my life. To have to go through that, I knew it would stop me in my tracks. I was so focused on work and what I could do that to lose that physical capability was beyond what I was willing to accept at all. So I kept it to myself for a couple of months. But when I finally went through it, it ended up being a full year of treatments, a full year of chemotherapy, lumpectomy, radiation, some reconstructive surgeries later. It was years of being a patient. And at first I was terrified because it really breast cancer strips you of everything that makes you a woman. It strips you of your femininity. You lose your hair. You start getting pale. Your skin's rough. I had a port sticking out of my shoulder. I had scar tissues all over my left side. So I had to find a way to handle this that I hadn't been called on to do before. So as I was going through that, I learned an empathy for others that I had never felt before. I would have called myself very impatient, and I still work on that. But now I was seeing these people who were sick and who were struggling, and they were strong. It just took 1 or 2 conversations to see how strong and massively powerful these people were. So having cancer taught me an empathy and a strength that I did not know I had. And this was probably the first time where I was able to look at an event and understand what it did for me as a soul. I was able to see the intentionality behind this event. It formed me. It took a woman who was so strong and so secure on the military side. I love that side of myself, and I take a lot of pride in my work, but it honed me down and it slowed me down to the point where I had to focus on something else. I had to pay attention to the softer side of me, the weaker side of me is what I would have called it. So for the last few years after going through that, I've been able to work with friends and family who have gone through breast cancer. I've had a layer of empathy and open eyes that I absolutely did not have before. And it also made me look at the other traumatic events in my life and see what it was that they gave me. And I was able to see that these things were gifts. That situation with my parents' divorce was a gift. The abuse that I had with my mother was a gift, because I can look at these things and I can pull strength from them. They were lessons that I had to learn. And as painful as they were, I realized they were part of what made me who I was. So fast forwarding, I focused on spirituality a lot after the breast cancer. Um, but I always considered myself still a student, never someone that could turn around and teach this stuff. So I met Amanda Marie Masters, I guess around last January. And I started working with her as a mentor. And I remember telling her that I still felt like a student, that I'd been studying spirituality for 10 years. And she laughed at me. She goes, after 10 years, you're not studying spirituality anymore. You are spirit. You are a divine spiritual being. You are a master and you're a teacher. Hence, that everything that I was worried about as far as my insecurities, etc., I was exactly who I needed to be, that I had nothing to fear. And that dream woman that I had had for all of those years was me. That was my spiritual side. That child of light was my spiritual side telling me that I wasn't alone. And it was strong for me when I was weak. And it was with me throughout all those years. As a guide. So when I no longer dreamt of her, and I don't dream of her as much anymore, I still have dreams of fighting, but it's me when I see now. I see my face and I feel my strength because that woman is merging with who I am. I'm becoming that child of light. And this is very much because of Amanda's help and her master channel. She opens me up to a world of spirit that combines my left-brained side with this spiritual child of light warrior that I wanted to become. And I realized what was hanging me up so much with spirituality was that I didn't feel it the same way that other people did. I always felt kind of out of place at spiritual meetings. Everybody's very, very sweet and very outgoing and very touchy. Everybody likes to hug. I don't mind hugging, but I just felt whenever I would get into these groups, I would feel very introverted. So I realized that spirituality was different for me than it was going to be for everybody else. But that was okay. I had a different gift. And that was very much how I started looking at the left brain side of spirituality. And I didn't even know it existed. So what I started looking into was using my computer background, the engineering, that left side, analytical side of my brain, and using that to find out how spirit was going to fit with me. So I literally went through every birth chart, astrological background, Chinese zodiacs, numerology, Mayan calendar, every background thing I could find that was based on the date I was born and my name and the place that I was born. And I looked for patterns. I had these things listed down to the point where I was highlighting patterns. A natural leader, I found that across multiple signs. Aggressive, found that one across multiple places. And when I finished this analysis, this was hundreds of pages of documents by the end, I realized I was looking at a divine blueprint of myself. Not only was I who I was supposed to be, but I knew this. I chose this coming into this life. I had picked to go through those things, to have that militant side, to have that workaholic side, to even have the insecurities that I did and the problems with my mother. These things were in my charts. I could see them. I could see the patterns that I was going to face in life. And this, to me, was where that intentionality really started to kick in. I looked at my pages and I said, this is me. I intended all of this. And I'm divinely created. I am exactly who I'm supposed to be. And I cannot tell you what that did for me. I went from being somebody who I still suffer from depression every once in a while, but I looked at this life like I hoped it would be my last. I really did. And I hear a lot of light workers talking about this, that they don't want to come back in the next life because it's too hard. And it is. It's horribly hard. But what intentionality showed me was the awe and the gift that coming into this life really is. There's a gift to incarnation that you cannot get anywhere else. There's a magic to this world that you can't get if you're just floating around in spirit all the time. So I used to say I would not come back again if I had a choice. Now I'm really looking forward to coming back. I'm looking forward to coming back into a world that has Awake TV, that has all these spiritual people working together to raise the consciousness of this planet. And I'm really looking forward to experiencing what we create together. There's a majesty that I can't express in words. But that's what my show is going to be about. I want to share with you what I have found, the just amazing quality that is Earth, that is humanity, that is down to the smallest atom. There is something magical about our planet. And the more I see of it, the more I want to learn, the more I want to come back and learn more. One lifetime does not feel like enough to learn all of this anymore. So I hope to share some of that with you. And that was a very long introduction and a lot of personal information. That's probably the most I've ever said about myself in one sitting ever. So thank you. Thank you for being such a good audience on that one. And I want to get into a couple of examples today to pique your interest in the show. And I'm not going to go too deep into any of this, but I really wanted you to see and feel what I'm seeing and feeling. So let me share this screen with you. 1 second. Let me just refresh this to make sure I don't have any. Oh, I do have one comment. Oh, it's from Bree. Thank you, Bree, very much. She says that I have become a dream version of myself, and she's absolutely right. It has been so liberating to really embrace that child of light. It is, and I haven't completely. She is this massive being that, yeah, I could spend an entire episode talking about the dreams that I've had with this woman, but this is me. And I'm going to embrace this with every fiber of my being until it is my skin. So let me get down to a couple examples of how cool this spiritual world is. So before I move on, I want you to look down into the far right screen. I have met this wonderful artist, and she takes sacred geometry and she incorporates it into videos, or I'm sorry, into art. So you can see this beautiful blue man down here. She's incorporated my science background with the spirit. And I've got her information at the end for anybody who's interested, but I just wanted you guys to take a look at that. So episode 1, starting with sacred geometry. So sacred geometry is really where physics meets mysticism. So it's defined as the geometric laws that create everything in existence. So everything is created to a shape, to a specification that goes back to geometry in a way that your math teachers don't really tell you about. So I want to show you a couple examples of this, and I want science and spirituality to bridge, but I don't want science to be intimidating. So we're going to keep this light. So when I say sacred geometry is everywhere, I literally mean everywhere. So if you look on the far left, that is the basis of sacred geometry. It's this beautiful sphere, and the sphere is the original symbol of geometry. They say that the entirety of creation was started as one sphere. And that sphere started adding onto itself, and you can see in those bubbles there, it adds onto itself to create these beautiful patterns. So this down here is the seed of life. And you can see the infinity symbol is located within this. And the infinity symbol has been around. I've known about the infinity symbol forever. It's used in math all the time. But what I didn't know what this was linked to sacred geometry. Now, sacred geometry has been around since ancient times. Spiritual teachers have been using it since the beginning of time. You will find, for instance, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. He had this beautiful painting, and everybody talked about how wonderful it was. But if you actually look down at it, the circle that goes around his body, he fits perfectly into the sphere. And that sphere fits perfectly into the box. And the dimensions that he used for this picture have been commented on forever. And he made this well before sacred geometry really became well understood in the massive world. And if you look at this picture in the middle, overlaid on top of the Vitruvian Man is the spiral. This is the Fibonacci sequence. So, and I've got some information here because I don't want to misquote it. So Leonardo of Pisa, who was later known as Fibonacci, discovered this spiral. And I've read that he discovered this spiral by looking at plants. And you can see that plant in the top corner. When you look at the inside of a plant and you start working your way out, the petals become more and more and more. So you start with 1, you go out to 3, you go out to 5, and you just keep circling out. And he had this mathematical equation that he realized was inside of most flowers fit this pattern that had this perfect spiral inside of it. You see it in seashells. You see it all over the world in nature. So the Fibonacci sequence to perfection fits on top of the Vitruvian Man. You move to the right side. On top of the spiral, you have the flower of life. Now, the flower of life is known as the ultimate symbol in sacred geometry. It has been found all over the world, in ancient Egypt, in China, in the Forbidden City, in parts of South America, in the ancient areas. This symbol is used very, very widely today by spiritual people. But you look how it perfectly overlays on top of the Vitruvian Man. And also you can see the seed of life, which is on the center, and that spiral going up the middle, the green spiral. That's the infinity symbol, but it looks very, very much like a DNA sequence. So sacred geometry is everywhere. This is just a small taste of it. I love sacred geometry. I like showing how it fits into different areas. So this is going to be a very big focus of my show, is showing these patterns. So where you can see it out in the world in some of the sacred sites, the one on your left is Stonehenge. Stonehenge is created in a perfect circle with the circle on the outside, and that pattern overlaid is the flower of life. It fits perfectly over it. That is maybe 1% of the magical things that are at Stonehenge. The pyramid is the same way, the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you look at the dimensions of the Pyramid of Giza, it fits the base diameter of Earth and actually lines up with the moon as well. And the dimensions and how they fit and how they're all relative is absolutely incredible. It should not be possible that they were able to create the pyramids that would have the relational elements of the sun, the moon, and the earth. It should have been impossible. So not to mention that it's lined up with Orion's belt, the pyramids. So tons of examples out in this real world. Now you break that down to the myopic and you look inside the body. And we're not talking just human bodies. We're talking about all mammals in general. So the egg in a woman's womb starts out as the perfect sphere, that divine feminine, the first symbol of sacred geometry. As the male sperm is introduced, it creates the Vesica Pisces, which is the second symbol in sacred geometry. And you can see that at the bottom, the two circles that overlap. They correspond to the cells as they divide and age to become the embryo in a woman's womb, to the point where that seed of life, that symbol we saw a couple stages ago, is the same symbol as the 8-cell stage of an embryo. Right before it splits, on that final right, you can see that symbol there. It's the same number of circles as the flower of life. It creates the flower of life. When I saw this, I couldn't quite contain how exciting this was for me, that the flower of life, the most divine symbol in the world, was carried in the womb on top of our bodies, overlaid on our bodies. We created the flower of life before we were ever born. that divine symbol is literally in our DNA. And I don't know if I can convey enough how cool that is. But anyone who says you're not divine, you were born divine. Literally. It's in the science. It's right there. And I get on my soapboxes. So and there's me with the flower of life. So if you take this a step further, if it was in the embryo and I meditated on this, I said, okay, if we form the flower of life before we're born, what does that mean? And what I heard from spirit was that the flower of life symbol is literally the makeup of our DNA. It activates through us like ley lines of light, and it crisscrosses throughout our body in this perfect sacred geometrical shape. And when we understand that, we can learn to resonate at that perfect pitch where we're supposed to. And we get out of balance because we're here on earth and we're very human. But this is who and what we are. This is that divine blueprint of who and what we are. And if we can shift ourselves slightly to get back in resonance with that, we're now back in touch with our divinity. We can heal ourselves. There would be no more aging. There would be no more disease. The possibilities are really endless with this. And they talk about, if you ever read the Bible and some of the other religious texts, people lived for hundreds of years. Like I think 800 years was a couple of the early people. And other people like Thoth came back life after life, but he never died. He just chose to leave and to come back. And I think this is why, because we have that divine blueprint inside of us. We're able to activate that and get in touch with our divine selves in this human form. And sacred geometry shows us that it's already inside of us. So another symbol that I want to talk about, and I'm still doing good on time. So the Vesica Pisces is that symbol I told you about that has the two overlapping circles. So what this symbol does, and the importance of this symbol, is something I didn't realize until it came to me in a meditation. I was picturing these two circles, and then I was picturing the toroidal field, which is this beautiful energy field that's around all of our bodies. And science has been able to measure the electromagnetic field around a body to the point where Nassim Harman, who is a wonderful, wonderful scientist, explained that you don't actually ever touch anything. There's always a space in between. Even when it looks like you're touching, there's a space in between, a space of energy. So we have a measurable electronic field around us, and it resonates at different pitches depending on environmental conditions, our emotional conditions. So I want light workers to really think about this. If we have, well, I know we do, but we have these beautiful energy fields around us, these bubbles. When we step up to another person, our energy field and their energy field are creating this Vesica Pisces. We are overlapping in a sacred geometrical shape. So if your energy field resonates at a higher frequency, you are elevating and activating them in real time. It's just a matter of intention. If you keep your resonance higher, everybody that comes into your sphere, everybody that you create that Vesica Pisces with is going to be elevated as well. It's absolutely a massive concept that if you take this thought and you apply it to your life, and I do this all the time when I'm traveling through the airports, I imagine activating this bubble of light and getting my toroidal field to be as high energy as possible, so that everybody that passes by me is being influenced by my sphere. It is a very cool concept, and it really does show that we affect those around us. That's a scientific fact, that we can energetically affect those around us. So the importance of numbers, I got 15 minutes and I go really crazy on the numbers. So bear with me. So there is a language of math. And anybody who knows me, anybody who knew me when I was a kid that sees me talking about math and science should be laughing their butts off right now, because I was not a good student in these subjects. But I have learned that spiritual badass side of me is a mad scientist. So bear with me. So the universal language of the world really is mathematics. There is an elegance to all of creation. And I'm not talking about man-made creations, although you can see the pyramid here and how it, again, it fits across the diameter of Earth, as well as being relational to the moon. There is a natural elegance between the Earth and the moon and the size ratio that they have. And I will get into all of that in my show. There are numbers that repeat themselves across all societies. I have traveled to sacred sites around the world, and I will tell you that there are number patterns that our ancient ancestors used. Why? I love exploring those things. So for example, and again, I wrote these down because I didn't want to forget any of them. So the number 12, what you see in the picture there is the 12 Greek gods. Everybody learns about them when they're growing up. 12 also represents the number of hours in the AM and the PM. It represents the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 Chinese signs, the apostles in the Bible. There's 12 apostles in the Bible. There's 12 eggs in a dozen. The number 12 appears a lot. So I want to explore why it keeps popping up. 60 is the same way. So when you take the Fibonacci sequence and you do, you break down the math, and I'll show this to you on one of my shows. After 60 iterations of doing this basic multiplication, the numbers start to repeat. So when overlaid on top of a clock, you could see the Fibonacci sequence actually created the 60 minutes of a clock. And I saw this in a wonderful documentary, and I would love to show that to you. So there's also 60 minutes an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 miles per hour, 60 degrees in geometry, a very, very big number. The number 6 by itself is also a very, very famous number. And 144. So what you see here, there was 144 days, Yes, 144 days in the Mayan calendar. There's 144 white casing stones on the Giza pyramid. 144 chosen ones in the Bible. It is a number that appears very often when they're talking about culminations of things. I always think of it as like a collective number. So this is something I will get into very, very heavily in my show. Music is another one. So there's a frequency to music that I've had to learn about a lot. And mostly this came to me because of the number thing. 432 hertz was the frequency that all instruments were tuned to for hundreds of years. Now, where that came from, I've seen some differing opinions on that. But in between World War I and World War II, that was changed. Someone decided to change the universal tuning frequency to 440. Now, 440, if you read it, does not have, it has a totally different resonance about it. So all music that is now tuned to this 440 hertz is reacting to your electromagnetic field, to your body differently than the music did 100 years ago. And I want to show that this 440 does not resonate with our bodies at the level that we need it to. 432 resonated at a much, much deeper level because it breaks down to a divine number. It breaks down to the divine number 9. Now, I absolutely don't think I have time to get into all of these, but the number 9 was the basis for all music. And if you look at the numbers here on the factor 9 chart, 126 is a C. 135 is a C sharp. To get the factor 9, and please forgive me, I promise I will do this slower on my show and go into more depth. You have to break it down to a single digit. So you take 135, you add the 1 to the 3 to the 5, equals 9. You've got another example down there. 1728 is the 1 plus the 7 plus the 2 plus the 8 equals 18. Still need to break it down because I need it down to one digit. So I could do the 1 plus the 8 and it equals 9. All musical notes that were tuned to that original 432 hertz broke down to the number 9. All of them. So some of the things that I saw when I started researching this more, and this was the stuff that I'm getting in my meditations, telling me to research, was that the frequencies of two-dimensional shapes, when you broke those down, all equaled 9, every single one of them. But also the sequence that they create there with the F sharps is the perfect F sharp major chord, which was supposedly, and I'm not a musical person, this is supposed to be one of the most beautiful, perfect, balanced chords in the musical notes, or in the musical world. But this wasn't all. When I compared the two-dimensional shapes to the three-dimensional shapes, I saw that the numbers they created and the notes that they created actually created that exact same major F chord. And I looked at the sacred geometrical shapes, and again, we have the exact same chord, the major F chord. And all of these numbers break down to the 9. These are the hertz that they are played at today. These are the hertz that they resonate at today. When you break all of these down to one number, they equal 9. I don't know how this is possible. I don't know how sacred geometry has anything to do with the basic two-dimension degrees. I couldn't tell you. This is what this show is all about, though. If I'm right and 430 hertz resonates differently with our body, then what is 440 doing? What is it doing to our body? This is one of the experiments that I want to do in my show. I want to, and I have done this experiment on my own, is playing 440 hertz to a seed in soil and paying 432 hertz to a seed in soil. And you play them for 5 minutes each. And you just compare how they grow. Now I can tell you how they grow because I've done this experiment. It was profound. The strength and speed with which the 432 hertz plant grew blew my mind. The 440 stayed scraggly and skinny and died before it could get its second set of leaves. So this is one of the experiments that I want to do on my show. And I want to see your pictures. I want to see how these go for you. And I'm actually I think I'm gonna have to skip over. Oh, I'll talk about this one very quick. Yeah, I'm still doing okay. So we work at a base 10 math system. The very basics of mathematics is a base 10, means 0 to 9. When you look at a basic multiplication table, which I've created here, and then you break down each of those sections to a single digit, just like we did with the music, you'll start to see that there is a mirror image in math. So when I just did an example here. So 8 times 9 is 72. I break down 72, 7 plus 2 equals 9. So this is a chart of the completed breakdown of all these numbers into a single digit. And I don't know if you can see any patterns just from this. I promise I will break it down for you more. I dreamt of this. I woke up one morning dreaming of numbers and I started writing them down. I was like, there is a pattern here. And I have no idea why I was thinking about the base 10 math. So I started going through it and I was looking and I realized at the end of 9, after 9 multiplications, or after they reached the times 9, all of them equaled 9. All of them broke down to the single digit of 9. But there was more. The 1 and the 8 mirrored each other. So they're the exact same sequence backwards. So you can see the 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 8 is 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 2 and the 7 mirror each other. The 4 and the 5 mirror each other. The only ones that didn't have mirrors were the 3, the 6, and the 9. But if you look at the sequence of them, they are a perfect sequence. This is why Nikola Tesla said in a very famous quote, if you understand the power of the 3, the 6, and the 9, you will understand the universe. There is a massive amount of information to learn in this universe. And it's stunning. And I want to share it with you. So I will totally get into all of that more on my shows. I love this stuff. I don't know where, I do know where it's coming from. Spirit has been bringing me these wonderful scientific guides that are feeding me this information because I am here to help figure out what the blueprint of the universe is. And I want to do this with you. This is not one person. This is a giant puzzle piece or puzzle. And I have one piece. And I want you to bring your piece so that we can create this together. So please watch me live on Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can email me at chrisalicia@intentiality.com because as we do these experiments, I'm going to want to see what you can do. And the website is intentiality.com. And I'll just take it off of here because I am running low on time. It's going to kick me off any minute. So join me on this journey. This is going to be crazy. I have a whiteboard room, folks. I have a room of whiteboards and I just go in there and I sketch this stuff out. This is where that math came from. I wrote it on a whiteboard and I started drawing links to it. This stuff is amazing. There is science and quantum physics out there that will change the way you look at the world. It'll change the way you look at spirituality. There is a divine blueprint, folks. We're not going to learn to recognize it. We're going to learn to interact with it. We're going to learn to bring it back to who we are. If we could walk around in our divinity all day, every day, who wouldn't want to experience that? It's going to be massive. And if you ever want help working on your divine blueprint and using that analytical, crazy brain that I got going, I do help people build their own divine blueprint packages based on their information. I'm going to take the left brain and I'm going to help prove spirituality. And I really hope you all join me. It is going to be absolutely wonderful. Please remember, everybody, we ascend together, we affect each other. And we're on this journey as a team. And Awake TV is here to help lead the way. We love you guys. We need your support. We need you to share these videos out. We need you to participate. This is not a documentary. I'm not just going to come and talk to you every week. I want to interact with you. I want to hear what you have to say. And so does every other teacher on Awake TV. You think about the massive energy levels of these women and men. How could we not change the world? It's going to be pretty incredible. And I'm honored to be with you.